Welcome to Your American Dream. I'm Anisha Jennings, and today we're speaking with Maria Imbalzano, an award winning contemporary romance author who took an unexpected path to literary success. A former divorce attorney who once claimed to lack any creative bones, Maria has formed her legal expertise into compelling romance novels that have earned her recognition from organizations across the country. Her journey from dreading creative writing assignments to becoming a celebrated novelist is both inspiring and proof that our greatest strengths can emerge from the most unlikely places. Maria is a granddaughter of immigrants, and she's going to share our story today. Welcome, Maria. Thank you so much for being on my show today.
Thanks so much, Anisha. I really appreciate being here.
Thank you. So, tell us all about your journey. It seems like you've had this wonderful journey where you've had experience as a granddaughter of immigrants, and you've moved from being an attorney into books, and you're just this amazing person. Tell us all about it.
I generally say that I'm Italian, but I'm only half Italian, and that's my last name, and I never changed my name. So on my dad's side, my grandparents came from Italy, the toe of the boot, Calabria, and they came to Trenton, New Jersey. And my grandfather was a barber by trade, and so that's what my father did. He became a barber. And as a result, their barbershop was in the front of their house. But before it was a barbershop, apparently it was a grocery store that my grandmother and great grandmother ran, which I never saw. Once I was born, my grandfather already had his barbershop there. Now, my father did not work for his father right away, although he apprenticed with him. He worked down the street at a different barber for whatever reason. I don't know why. But eventually he joined my grandfather at his shop in front of the house where my father was born.
Wow.
So the house was on South Clinton Avenue in Trenton. And I was there every Sunday for lunch after church, but it was really like dinner. It was
Yeah.
pasta and meatballs and sauce, but I didn't like sauce. I wanted butter on my pasta and I wanted water and bread. And my aunts always said that I would be able to live in prison because of what I ate. But it was a big, happy family. So my father had 5 sisters and a brother. They all grew up in that house where the barbershop was. And on the 3rd floor, when my first aunt got married, she moved up there with her husband and had 2 children. And then after they moved out, another aunt and uncle moved in. And so every Sunday when we would go there, it was a lot of cousins and aunts and uncles, and it was really a lot of fun. But my grandfather spoke kind of broken English. So I never probably talked to him all that much because as a little kid, it was kind of hard. But he loved to play checkers. So I would play checkers with him, but he would always win. He would never let the grandkids win ever.
Oh.
I don't know why, but that's how it was. But, really nice, wonderful, loving grandparents. And that was on my father's side. On my mother's side, her parents came from Czechoslovakia, Trobishow, and they went to Roebling because of Roebling Steel. The Roebling Steel plant needed workers, and a lot of people from Poland and Germany and Czechoslovakia came to the United States and worked in Roebling. And interestingly, Mr. Roebling, the one at the time, built all these houses that he rented to his factory workers. But my grandparents, originally they had a farm, which I never saw. But after my grandfather died way before I was born, when my mom was 17. So I never met him. But my grandmother at some point sold the farm and opened a little confectionery store in Roebling. So it was such a cute little place with the red leather stools and the soda fountain and the ice cream, and there were pinball machines in there. And I later learned that they had an illegal gaming machine in there. Oh my God, how does that happen? Well, apparently the mafia had come into Roebling and tried to get their machines into certain businesses. And, I guess the people were afraid, so they just let them do it. And of
Wow.
course, they took all the money, but it didn't last long because the police learned about it and they were removed. But I was like, how could my grandmother have done that? But eventually, the Roebling houses that were for rent were sold to the townspeople, and my grandmother bought one and moved into one of them. And they're kind of like the row houses in Philadelphia, like all
Mm.
connected in one block. But that was also a fun place where we went after we went to lunch at my one grandmother's house in Trenton for the Italian dinner. We went to my other grandmother's house in Roebling for the Czechoslovakian dinner, I guess.
Wow. That's amazing.
My mother also had a lot of sisters and a brother. So all my cousins would be there. And it was always just a lot of fun. Every Sunday we did the same thing. We'd go
Nice.
see my grandparents, my aunts and uncles, my cousins. It was a really nice way to grow up.
That's amazing.
Unfortunately, we don't do that anymore.
I know, I know. It's so important, and I remember doing that too. Growing up, we would all gather at my grandparents' home, and it was so much fun. And it's missing.
It is. Now, my mother is still alive, the only grandparent in our family. She's 98.
Wow,
But she's amazing. She does crossword puzzles every day, cryptoquips every day. She goes
wow.
grocery shopping. She doesn't drive anymore. She stopped 3 years ago when she was 95.
Mm,
But one of the fun things is she used to be an Arthur Murray dance teacher, a ballroom dance teacher. So one of the books that I wrote, it's called The Blueberry Swirl Waltz, and it's based a little bit on her life in Roebling. So the setting is in Roebling. The setting is at my grandmother's confectionery shop
wow,
in the early 50s. So it takes
wow.
place in like 1951. And the heroine of the story is kind of based on my mom. It's not her story at all, but
Mm,
I picked like what she did. So she used to work at a department store in Trenton when Trenton was just beautiful. And I remember those days. There were so many lovely stores there. And my mother worked at Yards, which was like similar to a Macy's today. Like, it
mm,
had many floors and many departments. But she loved to dance. She was like a really good dancer. So I guess originally she went over to Arthur Murray and they taught her some of the ballroom dances, and then they hired her as a teacher.
lovely.
So my heroine of the Blueberry Swirl Waltz is a ballroom dance teacher, or she gets the job doing that, but she has to go home to Roebling to run the store for the summer because her mother broke her arm. So,
Oh, that is a
so
great
it's like
story.
a really sweet story about the ice cream shop, but I brought my mother's life into it. And that's how I found out about the illegal gambling machine. I was interviewing my mom for the book, and I have two interviews on my blog on my website with my mom. One was about the ice cream store because I couldn't remember everything. I think I was 5 when my grandmother sold it. And
Mm,
one was about her ballroom dancing days. So it
wow.
was so fun to incorporate her into the story.
Absolutely. So what of the store after she sold it? Is it still there? What is the
So right next to it was a Greek Catholic church. And so now it's the rectory or the priest house, because it was a house as well. So it was
Okay,
a
okay.
store and a house. And my grandmother and all her kids lived in that house. And I
Wow.
remember the house and the store, but she sold it to the parish. And
Lovely.
so now priests live there.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for this fun history lesson. And, it's so fun learning about your journey and your roots, right? So tell us a little bit about your early life. Like, what did that look like for you as a child, growing up with, both sets of your grandparents and also having this strong, family where you're with your cousins? What did that look like? And what was, you said you were also an avid book reader. How did all of that happen?
So I went to St. Anthony's Grammar School and St. Anthony's High School, both in Hamilton Township, Trenton, within walking distance of our house. And the whole neighborhood went there. So it was really fun. We had a great neighborhood with a lot of young people. We would play outside every day. Our parents you would leave back then on your bike and never come back until it was lunchtime or dinner time.
Yeah.
And it was a really fun neighborhood. We'd be at each other's houses. All the parents took care of all the kids. If you were there for lunch, you got lunch at that house. And the same with my mom. They were all at the time stay-at-home moms. Eventually, they
Mm.
all did go to work. My father was the barber at my grandfather's place. And so he left early every morning. But I loved school. And as you said, I was an avid reader. So connected to our school and church was a library. And we would go after church to the library every Sunday. I
Mm.
required it. Um, and
Wow.
I would get as many books as you could take out, like maybe it was five, I don't know. And I would just sit in the house and read. So I love to read all the saints' biographies, but I also love Nancy Drew and the Bobbsey twins and all those fun books. So during the summer, all the kids are outside playing and I'm inside reading. And my mother would say, you have to go out and play. And I'd go, but then I'd come back in and start reading again. So one day she locked me out of the house.
Aw.
So I couldn't come back in to read.
Aw.
But it was fun, it was good. It was all good. So my love of reading, dates back to the day I could start reading. And I always read. Even when I was in college, I would take literature courses just so that I could read books instead of like a study book.
Yeah.
And it was great. I would sit up in the library for hours and hours reading whatever book we were reading for that week. So I ended up going to Rutgers. It had just turned co-ed when I went
Mm.
there. So going back a little bit, although everybody thinks it was always co-ed, but it was not. It
Ah,
turned
okay.
co-ed in 1972. So it was
Wow.
an all-male school, but there was a female school, Douglas College, which is also still there. Well, now it's all combined, but it was there when I went to Rutgers, and you could take classes at any of the schools. So I picked psychology as a major. I'm not sure. I think because I just didn't know what to choose, and I really liked the idea of being able to counsel people, I thought.
Mm.
But after college, I had student loans, and I thought I better work for a little bit before I go on and get a master's degree because I have to pay off these loans. My parents didn't have the money to put me through college. So I took a job as a paralegal, which was a brand new kind of job back then. There was one school in all of the United States called the
Wow.
Institute for Paralegal Training, and it was in Philadelphia. And it was a 3-month program for college graduates, and they guaranteed you a job in the city of your choice or you got your tuition back. So they
Wow.
knew they were going to get you a job wherever you wanted to work.
Wow.
So I had always wanted to work in New York City because when I was younger, that girl, I know you probably don't know that show, but Marlo Thomas was in this sitcom, half-hour sitcom called That Girl, and she lived in New York City. And ever since then I wanted to live in New York. So I picked New York City as the city that I wanted to get a job in, and I had a job before I even got out of the program.
Wow.
I mean, there was
Wow.
just so much demand for paralegals. So I worked at a law firm on Park and 50th. It was called Proskauer, Rose, Getz and Mendelsohn. It was a huge firm, and it was right across from the Waldorf. It was a great location, and I worked in estates and trust, which is very tax oriented. I loved it. I was always a good math person and loved my job, just loved it.
Mm.
So at some point I was working with lawyers who had gone to Harvard and Yale and Columbia and NYU, and I'm thinking, well, why don't I do that? Why am I getting paid as a paralegal? I should just go to law school, which
Yeah.
was never even something that was in my vision, having grown up the way I did. My
Right.
parents did not go to college. Actually, none of my aunts and uncles went to college. Certainly, my grandparents didn't. So they didn't even know how to help me when I was applying to colleges or
Mm.
figuring out how to pay for it.
Right.
So I decided that I was going to go to law school, which was so crazy. Like it was just nothing that was in my periphery. But I took an LSAT prep course, and 2 weeks before the test, I took a practice course, and it was broken up at the time into 8 sections, and one was called legal reasoning. And on the practice test, I got every single one in that section wrong.
Okay.
And I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to pass this test and get into law school? So I just practiced that section and sort of learned how to take it. And I ended up getting in the 97th percentile of the
Wow.
LSAT. So I definitely learned how to take the test. So if anybody's out there looking to do that, you can learn how to take a test like that.
Yeah.
So I ended up going to Fordham Law School, which is at Lincoln Center in the city, in New York City. But the good thing was I had worked for 4 years in between
Mm.
college and law school as a paralegal. So I had
Right.
paid off, not my student loans, but I was paying that off. But I paid off credit card debt and I started trying to save some money because I wanted to live in New York while I was going to
Mm.
school, which I did. I found a place to live. A woman who lived in a beautiful co op on the Upper West Side was renting out like a room, a bedroom and
Mm.
bathroom in her house. So it was within walking distance of the schools.
Lovely.
I was able to walk every day and go to law school. My father would give me $20 a week. And I did have a job, like I was working as well, but not full time because law school
Mm.
is crazy, just a part time job. But the $20 a week I would spend on breakfast lunch. So there was this little deli right around the corner from law school that would sell egg sandwiches, an egg sandwich and coffee for like $1.75. It was so
Wow.
cheap.
My gosh.
So I would get that at like 11 o'clock. So it would cover breakfast, lunch. So,
Mm.
you just learn to be very thrifty. Obviously, I had to take out student loans. And my third year, I don't know what happened, but I ended up putting my tuition on my Visa card at 21% interest.
Wow.
But I got through. So the nice thing was that my in between second and third year, I was looking for a job, a summer law clerk job. And it was a recession, so it was really hard to get a job in New York City at the time. And
Mm.
my father said, well, why don't you come back home for the summer? And I'm like, I really don't want to do that, but where would I work? I don't know any law firms there. So my dad knew the state senator, his name was Joe Merlino back then, who went to my father's barbershop like once a
Oh,
week.
wow.
And he knew me because I would stop by my father's barbershop all the time.
Yeah.
So he said, call Joe and he'll know. I mean, he had his own law practice, but he
Oh.
was small. He didn't meet anyone. So he told me to apply to Stark and Stark, which is now a large law firm in central New
Yeah.
Jersey. So I did, and I got the job for the summer. And then at the end of the summer, they hired me for when I graduated from law school. So I wasn't sure though that that's where I wanted to be. I wanted to go back to New York.
Mm.
However, I loved that summer job. I loved the people that I worked with. And I thought, maybe it's better to be a big fish in a small pond instead of a
Mm.
small fish in a big pond. So I did. I accepted the job and I was there for my entire career of 38 years.
Wow. Power of networking.
I'm sorry?
The power of networking.
Yes.
Your dad probably spoke to him and he spoke about his business, and for all
Right.
these things to just align, and you spent the rest of your life there. So what was that journey like?
So it was really a great journey. And the funny thing is that my father was so annoyed that I was going to paralegal school after college because he said, you just spent 4 years in college. Like, why don't you just go get a job? Why
Mm.
go to school? And I said, because what was happening was I was going into New York looking for a job while I was in my senior year of college. And I went to companies that would, set you up with a job. And they would all make me take typing
Ah.
tests. And I said, but I'm going to be a college graduate. I'm graduated from Rutgers in a few months. I don't see any man coming in here taking typing tests.
Mm.
And they just wouldn't back off. Like every woman that walked in the door that had to take typing tests, and I would go home and practice. Like I knew how to type, but
Mm.
and we didn't have computers back then. It's just that
Right.
I had learned. My aunt Carmela, my father's sister, was a typing teacher and steno teacher at Trenton High. And
Wow.
so she taught me how to type when I was in high school. So it was
Lovely.
good. It was good that I knew. But I was going home, to my dorm practicing typing to try to find a job. So when I heard about this paralegal school, I said, well, I will get a job doing this and this will be perfect. So my father was so happy when eventually, because it led me to going to law school. And then he was like, "Oh, okay."
Right.
So it was good. But working at Stark and Stark was a great job. Obviously, I never left. I met my
Mhm.
husband there. I started in, well, we both started in September of 1983.
Wow.
And he started 2 weeks before me. But I had a boyfriend, he had a girlfriend, and we were just good friends. And then at some point, we both broke up with our significant others at the time and ended up together.
Oh,
And we're still together
lovely.
all these years later. But it was nice because the firm was much smaller at the time.
Mm.
So everybody was friendly. We went out to happy hours on Friday nights and we went out to lunch every day, whoever was around,
Yeah.
whoever wasn't in court. And everybody went to each other's weddings, and if their kids were getting baptized or bris or whatever, whatever religion, we would all go to those religious rites. And I've been to so many bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs, but it was great. So, I'm still friendly with a lot of those people, even though I'm retired from the practice of law now. But it was a great family. And I originally had started doing estates and trust because that's what I had been as a paralegal. And that's
Hmm.
why I went to law school.
Right.
And I had taken every tax course imaginable in law school, which
Wow.
everybody thought I was crazy, but I loved taxes.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so I was doing estates and trust and estate planning, but at some point they needed a family law attorney.
Mm.
And they said, "Why don't you do it?" And I'm like, "Oh no, I do not want to do divorce. I really don't want to go to court." And, doing estates and trust, you didn't go to court unless there was a will contest, which I did have, but that was like they were few and far between.
Mm.
So I resisted it for about a year. And then I said, well, maybe I'll try it. So I had to learn this whole new area of law, which I learned it slowly. Took in a client here and there and learned my way around by talking to other attorneys and taking lots of courses. And then that's what I did. So most of my career, I was a family law attorney, mostly doing divorce cases, helping. I think my psychology background really helped with that.
Mm.
So it was a nice practice. It was very stressful. Like clients are never happy. Like they're going
Right.
through the worst time of their life.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they would take their anger out on their attorney,
Of
which I
course.
got it. I
Yeah.
understood. I had very thick skin at some point. But even when I was working as an attorney every night after dealing with the kids' homework and all of that
Mm.
stuff, I would read.
Oh, wow.
And one night I was reading a book by a well known author, but she was annoying me. And I'm talking to her as I'm reading the book. Like, I got it the first time you said it. And then I
Yeah.
said to myself, I bet you I could write a book. Like,
Ooh,
where
okay.
that came from, I have no idea because, as you said in the beginning, and I told you, I hated creative writing. I was
Mm.
not good at it. I don't know why I thought I could write a book, although I loved legal writing. But legal writing is very different.
Wow.
Writing appellate briefs or memos for the court, it's very linear, it's analytical.
Mm.
You're arguing your case. And I was really good at that type of writing. But
Mm.
creative writing, like I had no idea how to even do it. But I've obviously read tons of books over my lifetime. So I decided I was going to try it. But first, I had to learn how to word process because I wasn't going to write it out by longhand.
Right.
And I knew how to type, but I didn't know how to cut and paste and do anything else on the computer at the time. I had a secretary that did all my typing. So
Mm.
I really didn't know. So I took a 1 day computer course. I started taking just going to seminars, like conferences, nothing. I didn't go back to school or anything. I mean, I was working full time. I had kids. I wasn't going to do that. I was just trying to figure out how to do it. How do you write a book? But interestingly, as a lawyer and in many practices, we had to take continuing legal education
Ah.
credits. Across my desk comes a flyer that says how to write a book in 14 days, a lawyer's guide. I'm like, oh, this is fate.
Oh my
So
goodness.
I signed up for that seminar. It was just a half a day. And I thought nobody's going to be there. It didn't matter. I was getting credit for it. And it was going to help jumpstart me. Well, I walk in the room. It was at this crummy hotel in Edison. Um, and it was packed with would-be John Grishams, is what I
Wow.
say. Everybody wanted to be John Grisham. So it was so good for me because he tapped into the way lawyers think.
Hmm.
And what he did is showed us how to blueprint your novel. So it's almost like setting it up as it's way much more than a summary, but like
Hmm.
going from scene to scene, chapter to chapter. And I really keyed into that. And that's how I start every single one of my books now. I
Wow.
start with a notebook and, sort of generally I'll outline my story, but then I do it like the way he taught us to do it, scene by scene, chapter by chapter. And once I have that done, it's so easy to sit down and write the book.
Hmm.
So the nice thing was that I sort of segged into this while I was working as a lawyer. And for the first 5 years, I wrote 3 books, but,
Wow.
and I wasn't getting anywhere. Like I would send them out to agents and nobody was picking them up. But the third book that I wrote, by that time I had joined New Jersey Romance Writers, which is a branch of Romance Writers of America. And they have monthly meetings with people that would come in from New York City, agents, editors, lots of good information. And they also had a contest every year that went along with their conference.
Hmm.
And that year I submitted my unpublished manuscript or whatever part they wanted of it, and I won. And so I said, "Oh my god, I'm on my way. Like this is so good." And one of the judges was Kristen Hanna, who is an amazing author, and a lot of her books are now being turned into movies. But back then, she had books out. I certainly knew who she was. She was very popular, but not as popular as she is now.
Hmm.
And I talked to her at the conference, and she had been an attorney as well. And I do think that there's a lot of attorneys out there who turn into authors. It's just because we write so much, I
Yeah.
think. But so I was able to get an agent from winning that contest, and I thought, I am on my way. Well, I was not on my way. My book was never picked up, and it took another 10 years of writing and sending it out until I got a publishing contract.
Wow.
So so from sort of the day that I said I want to write a book to getting a contract was 15 years.
Wow. Wow. That is a long time.
I kept telling myself if I wasn't persistent, if I didn't persevere, then I would never be published. And if I
Right.
wanted to be published, then I had to keep going. And so I do have it within myself to push myself to get where I want to get. So I just
That's
kept going. And the fifth book that I wrote was the first book that got published. And
wow.
that was in 2013. And that's called Unchained Memories. And it takes place in Princeton. So all my books are pretty local.
Hmm.
Lawrenceville, Princeton, down the shore, Philadelphia, New York, Roebling. So I write about where I know.
Right.
I've lived in Philadelphia. I've lived in New York City. I've certainly lived in this area. Lawrenceville is where I'm from, where I live now. My mom's still in Hamilton. It's
Lovely.
good.
So now looking back, I mean, just listening to your story, it feels like, this was scripted, right? Like everything flows so well and everything came together so well. So looking back, what would your advice be to people who are starting now? If either they want to be a writer or whatever is their career path, what would be your advice for if they're stuck or if they don't know how to move forward or they're just frustrated or they're looking to pivot, what would be your advice?
So you have to know what you want to pivot to.
Hmm.
So I'll just take my writing. So I was working as a lawyer, but I wanted to write a novel. I had no idea how to write a novel. So you look for information.
Hmm.
I found out that New Jersey Romance Writers was a group and I wanted to write romance. So I joined. that group. So you want to look for people out there who are doing the thing that you want to do. So I went to their seminars or their conferences, which have amazing speakers, and you could learn a lot from going to any one of them. And then at the time, Romance Writers of America, which was the blanket organization, had a huge conference once a year somewhere in the United States. And the first year it was in Washington, D.C. So I went to that. I think there were like 3,000 authors there, right? People who wanted to be writers. And it's just an amazing thing to connect with people who want to do what you want to do or who are doing it. And I found that writers are very kind and supportive and generous with their information and their time so that you could ask any questions and they'll lead you in the right direction. So the small group of New Jersey romance writers, which, wasn't all that small, but the people that would show up at the meetings were, so you get to know them and you start asking questions and, where do I send my books
Right.
once I have something? And,
Right.
they would help you with that. I mean, now the internet has so much information, but
Yeah.
wasn't the case back then. Back then, we would get a monthly Romance Writers of America magazine that
Mm.
had a list of agents in there and their
Right.
addresses because you had to write a letter. We
Mm.
were not sending emails. And if
Right.
you sent something out, it was hard copy. So it's
Mm.
300 pages that you're
Wow.
mailing out of a manuscript. And if you want to send it to more than one place, it was pretty costly.
Yeah.
But that's how it was back then. I mean, now it's so much easier. You send an email and you might get a response, but a lot of times you don't even get a response,
Mm.
which I think is kind of rude.
It sure
Yeah,
is.
you could say no thanks.
Yes, yes, definitely. And that culture I think has changed over time. People just think it's okay to ghost and not even like respond. It's okay to say no, but
Exactly.
not okay to ghost.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
But the nice thing is that once I found my publisher, they're called the Wild Rose Press, and they just do romance and women's fiction,
Lovely.
and it's a small press. So they mostly do ebooks, but I have all my books in print. You can get print on demand. They're all available at Amazon or barnesandnoble.com or I think Walmart or target.com. It's one of them. But it's nice that you could get the print book,
Mm.
but you could also get the ebooks.
Right.
So I've stayed with them. I haven't even tried to move because they're so responsive. Like if I send an email to them, I get a response that day. And if the person that I sent it to doesn't have the answer, they will forward it to the correct person and I'll get a response from the correct person. And they've always been so easy to work with. So, I have an editor through there. They do the book covers, they do everything, get it out there. But it's a process and it takes a long time from the time I get a contract on a book to it being published. It could be like 7 months or eight
Wow.
months
Mm.
because of all the things that have to
Yeah.
be done in
Yeah.
between.
That's a good timeline though.
So it's but it's just so much fun. And the nice thing was because I was doing it while I was still working as a lawyer, once I retired, I was able to just slide right into my new career
Yes.
or
Yes.
the career that I had started while I was still working.
Yes. Yes. So yeah, what would be your advice to people, who are feeling stuck or, like 15 years being persistent with this thing that you had set your heart to? What would be your advice?
Well, I think that if it's something that you really want to do, as I said, you have to learn your craft. So
Mm.
you're always learning. I still go to seminars, I still go to conferences. I'm not the best at marketing, and that's a big piece of it. So, I might take a seminar on that or, follow up on something. So it's just lifelong learning to whatever you want to do, but you have to learn everything about that craft. So because I love books so much, I have a whole library of books on writing. So it might
Mm.
be about characterization, it might be about the arc of the story, it might be about emotions. I just have so many books, and every time I get stuck on something, I will go look in my little library.
Yeah,
and pull
lovely.
out the book and read about it. So I would just, my advice is you've got to learn whatever it is you want to move into, and you have to learn everything about it. By joining groups, by asking
Mhm.
questions, by going to seminars, by reading books. So not only am I reading craft books, but when I read a book that I love, like a romance book that I love, I will get the paperback or hardcover, and then I'll start highlighting
Mm,
or just taking sections and studying them. So I'm
yes,
always studying other authors as well so that I get better.
right.
But the thing is, you have to keep doing it as well. So what they say is with anything, you have to do it every day
Mm,
or almost every day. Certainly life gets in the way, but I'm usually doing something writing related every day, whether I'm
mm,
working on my current manuscript, which I'm doing, whether I'm doing something marketing wise, whether I'm studying or going to a conference, I'm doing something writing related every day. It might even be reading a book, but I might be
mm,
reading that book because I'm trying to learn something from it.
yeah,
So the best thing is to just keep at it. If you give up, you're never going to get there. So that was always my mantra. You want to be a published author, you have to keep going
yes,
and
absolutely.
don't give up.
Yes. Thank you so much for that advice. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your remarkable story. So, if anybody wants to get in touch with you or find your books, what is the best place to go?
So all of my books are available on Amazon, barnesandnoble.com, iTunes, but I also have a website. So I would direct you to my website where I have the buy links to all my books. It also tells you about all my books, like a little blurb about them. I blog once in a while. I'm not the best at that, but I have some interesting blogs in there. So my website is my name, Maria Imbalzano. And if you sign up for my newsletter right there, I also send out a newsletter, not a lot. I don't bug people with it. But anytime I have some news, certainly if I'm going to be speaking somewhere, if I'm going to have a book signing somewhere, if a new
Right.
book is coming out, or I have some other information that I want to share. So I send out a newsletter. I was trying to do it once a month, but I'm not very good at that.
Well, no, you have so much you're doing. So, no, I'm not surprised if you're not doing the newsletter.
But it is a good thing because the people that sign up for your newsletter are readers.
Yes, yes, indeed. Yes, absolutely.
So that's a good thing. Some of my books are available at local bookstores, or they're not really bookstores. So one is Corella's Chocolates and Gifts in
Yes,
Hamilton.
yes.
My books are there, and they're also in Ocean Grove at a gift shop on Main Street.
I like-
It's nice to when I walk into those places, it's nice to see my books up there.
Yes.
My book was also at a Key West bookstore, but somebody bought them and they're gone. Because
That's nice.
my latest book, Island Detour, takes place in Key West.
Okay.
I mean, it starts out around here, but it ends up in Key West. So they had my book down there, and the bookstore is owned by an author. So it's really fun to network with other people too. So networking is also important.
Important. Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much again for being here today. And to our listeners, remember that it's never too late to discover a hidden talent or pursue a passion that's been quietly waiting for the right moment to emerge. Thank you so much, Maria, for being here and sharing all your experiences, the history lessons, your journey, and all the nuggets that you shared with us.
Thanks so much for having me. It was fun.
Yes. Before we wrap up, I want to reach out to our amazing listener community. If you have an inspiring story of transformation, entrepreneurship, or overcoming challenges, we'd love to hear from you. We're always looking for guests who can share valuable insights and motivate others. Reach out to us if you're interested in being featured on the show. Also, if you're in the health and wellness space or you're a Christian coach who needs help with your website or tech stack, I'd love to work with you. Building the right digital foundation can make all the difference in reaching and serving your audience effectively. Feel free to connect with me to discuss how we can support your mission. We'll be back next week with another fascinating guest and story. Until then, keep exploring, keep growing, and maybe pick up one of Maria's romance novels. Until next time!